Thanks for joining us for this episode of Strategic Storytelling.
Jesse and I work together to help people and businesses reach and connect with their communities.
Brian is a visual storyteller, designer, and chief creative officer at Pathfinder.
Jesse is very passionate about entrepreneurship. He's a very loyal person, and he is a very caring individual as well.
In marketing, the storytelling leans on the strategy, but the strategy needs storytelling to be effective.
Agreed. Welcome back to another strategic storytelling with Brian and Jesse. And today we're going to talk about social media and all the things about social media. So,
well, I'm not sure we'll get to all of them.
well, no, likely not all of them, but
we can give it a good trial.
We're going to go into some of the best practices and some of the things into those, and just kind of find our way through all of the, because it's, when you say social media, that's a huge umbrella. Like it can kind of be daunting to kind of like figure out where to begin. So
let's begin with, simple definitions. Webster's defines media. I'm just kidding. No, I mean, it's, I think, social media started back, I don't know how many years ago now, but I always think back to like the start of social media being Zanga, which was more, which was more actually like a blog thing than a social media thing. But I think that's kind of where you kicked off. And then you got your MySpace. That was the big one that died off kind of. And then
Facebook is kind of what changed.
And then Facebook was
everything.
the new wave. So Facebook was really the beginning of social media, especially for the purpose, I think, of marketing for businesses.
Oh yeah. Once
MySpace was not, there was some, but not.
It was
not
a
much.
little bit, but yeah, Facebook was really the kind of the catalyst, if you will, of all the other things that kind of came together. Facebook definitely took off personally with the people, and then I think companies just figured out right away, like, oh, it's another platform that we can use to share our wares and goods.
And those advertisers came in and said, let's ruin another thing with more advertisements.
Basically, yeah.
And there it was.
Exactly.
But no, I mean, Facebook too, I think it's important to just think about like what it was versus what it is. Right.
Right.
It used to be very much like, man, I forget some of the terminology. It was like, do you want to post on somebody's wall?
Yes.
And
that was the beginning
people.
Yes. Posting on people's wall and the poke,
which is a real, in retrospect, a very strange.
Yeah.
I think what it meant was notify, but it said poke.
It did say poke. It was
so just a little strange.
Yeah.
Strange stuff.
But yeah, like do you think marketing and advertisers like right away caught onto that, or like what?
No.
What do you think was like the?
I don't even think, I'm not positive, but I don't even think there were like business pages back then.
No, there wasn't.
No, it wasn't. In fact, I wouldn't even say that Zuckerberg caught up. I mean, I think he knew, right? I think he knew what it could be, but like that was not the initial premise of it. It was, can I get everybody online in one place?
That was the initial thing. Yeah.
Which then advertisers were like, great, everyone's in one place. Fantastic. Let's go get them. Yep. But no, I mean, I think I do maybe this isn't true or not, but I hope that some of the founders of these companies were like, let's create this really cool environment where people can communicate and with each other and their families and friends in a more cohesive and easy way over time. I think that was kind of the initial thought. Of course, from there it's become all kinds of things different, but initially,
well, what is it now?
Now it is a voice. Is a platform to have your voice, regardless of whether we want to hear it or not.
This is very true. It's very true.
But I do. I mean, I joke a little about that, and I'm sure lots of people think some things about that. But I think it's really important for the businesses themselves, though, because I mean, truly, number one, you can have a voice,
right,
as a business,
right.
Number two, back up. So you can have a voice as a business, which before was not necessarily as easy, right? Mm-hmm. The billboards were like the thing, or other media platforms that were very expensive.
Like TV commercial or
TV commercials.
It was very expensive.
Very expensive. Yeah. So I feel like marketing has always been a thing, but it was more so advertising. I always think too, like to Mad Men, they don't really say marketing; they say advertising.
Yes.
And at that time, like their clients were these huge conglomerate companies. It wasn't,
because
Frank's Dollar Store.
Because I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking this wrong, but marketing. Well, what would be the difference between marketing and advertising?
Advertising is like paid ads for the most part.
Okay.
Marketing is like
the whole umbrella, right?
how we're putting our message out.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. So I think, back to prior to social media, I would say marketing was a little more, maybe prior to internet, marketing was a little more word of mouth or kind of physical things you might do. Like, how do you get them into your store when they're passing by your store? How do you talk about your store to the community? Maybe.
Okay.
I think too, you think about like towns at that point, jumping decades back now, like there was the ice cream shop.
Well, yeah,
there was the bread shop.
There was the local watering hole, like wherever you went to get.
There was the butcher.
Yeah.
Right. Like it was a very different environment. So I think marketing at that time was just more physical reality, verbal kind of stuff. I mean, and I think there were maybe some advertising opportunities, but just very different.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then social media happened. Facebook happened. And that kind of kickstarted this entire new wave of, hey, you can, any business, any size, any shape can do marketing. And there's lots of hiccups there as well on like, you can just say whatever you want and get away with it, right? There were no laws about that at all the time.
It definitely even the playing field for everyone, whether that is good or bad. Like you said, it gave everybody a voice.
Right.
But then I think what especially businesses had to figure out, like, what is that voice? Like what, like,
yeah.
And how do we be the voice that you listen to? Right.
Well, I feel we're getting onto like this totally side topic here, but branding, right, used to be your logo.
Right.
Or maybe a feeling in your physical location. But then over time, all the way to today, it's become how you talk about the business, the voice of the business, the values of the business, all these different things, because it's much more public knowledge.
Right.
It's easier to find those things. It's easier to talk about those things. It's a sense of feeling across, all these different posts, which in the past was more like one post, an advertisement.
Right.
Right. So just totally different world. And it gave the voice to individuals and businesses that was never there before. So,
well, we as a consumer, we as the general public, as a consumer, are smarter. Like we're smarter and have more access to the information. So being able to access those as well.
That kind of brings us to, we'll skip over some parts of this evolution and just say, as the smarter consumers now, right? One of the big things with social media right now, today, 2024, is kind of your authenticity, right? I remember when it was very early on, and maybe not even very early on, just a couple years ago, the way the algorithms worked on a lot of social media platforms, you could just post whatever you wanted. It didn't really matter. In fact, if you were posting regularly before COVID, you were already ahead of the game compared to most small businesses.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
Which doesn't seem like that long ago. And we certainly went through some waves of change, but like there were still tons of small businesses that, social media wise were just not present or barely present. And then COVID was like, oh, guess what? You have to do this or you will die.
Right.
And so everyone started doing more regardless of the quality or anything else. But before that, you could just, post whatever you wanted, whenever you wanted.
So in that vein, though, like what makes a post, what makes a graphic, what makes a video more authentic than another? How do you stay true to that authenticity?
I think there's a two-part piece to this in terms of how you're posting a piece of content. Number one, consistency.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Consistency. Like if you don't have to have every single post be this perfect, amazing piece of work, right? It's more about like, hey, don't be posting once a month or less. And that strictly has to do with the algorithm that most of these social platforms have put in place at this point, which is if you're not active regularly and being engaged with, that will result in pretty much nothing if you post once every once in a while. Then you need to be authentic. And so the authenticity piece is really like, number one, if you're super salesy on regular posts, we're not talking about paid ads on social media yet, but on just regular posts, if it's just constant barrage of sales activities, usually people don't really like that. They're not going to pause and see those things. So then you're not going to show up in their feed over and over and so on and so forth. People have gotten smart enough. They know when they're being sold to, right?
Right.
And I think with certain things, we're okay with that. But products we're not familiar with, brands we're not familiar with yet, we are not okay with that.
No. One,
we do not want that.
It's building that trust.
Yeah.
Right. It's authenticity builds that trust.
Right.
And that's where that, especially since we're smarter consumers, that's where that comes in. Like you're not like the reason why we buy Apple products is because we trust it to be a good product that is the cutting edge technology and it's going to last for a long time and have a lot of extra bells and whistles that we can utilize throughout. Right. So, authenticity, 100%.
So I think just, that can look a lot of different ways, right? Number one, don't lie. or exaggerate, right?
Right. Because people can check that out pretty quickly, right?
I think that's drawn out really easily with Google, Facebook reviews, things like that. But then also, people, it's interesting. I don't particularly feel this way, but most people do. Like they want you want to be humanized as a brand in a way that people resonate with, and so that they want to know your company, especially as a small business. They want to feel like you care about the same things they do, or at least parts of those same things. And it's kind of interesting because I feel like that's how it was. I'll be really over the top and say 100 years ago. And then like somewhere in the middle, we had this mass consumer market, like products were all the same. We all go to the Walmart and we get the same exact things. And that was okay with people, same clothes, same, I remember in the 90s, early 2000s when it was like, everyone had to have the same clothes. If you don't have these cool brand clothes, you're not cool. And it was like, everything's the same.
Right.
And now we're getting away from that again because everyone's sick of that, right? Everyone wants something unique. And I think that's the same with brands, which can be challenging and hard. I think a lot of people have a lot of questions about that. But really, your authentic self as a brand is kind of like, who are the people?
Right.
What do you believe in? And mostly, what do you believe in terms of your products specifically? Or your services, not necessarily what you believe in personally, politically, take your pick.
Right.
But like, what am I getting with this company? Because I think too, like, there's a lot of ways to market that on social media. Like, are you the quality option that costs a lot? Are you the cheap option that gets the job done? What are we looking for here?
Yeah. Well, and those are all important aspects of that too. And everybody has a different need.
Yeah.
And so being able to connect with those potential clients in a real way is important, and social media definitely helps out with that.
Well, I think social media too, like it's that window. Social media as a whole is just this window into your company. Like, everyone needs a website. Everyone kind of knows that, but on the website, like the website does not change, ebb and flow on a daily basis. The website is not necessarily where you're putting like, here's what's going on today. It's like, here's our brand as a whole. Here's our products as a whole. Here's our services as a whole. Social media kind of breaks that down and says, okay, but guess what? Something happened today. Guess what? There's something special going on. Guess what? We're having a normal day here. And that's what that looks like too.
Right.
So I think that's kind of it's like this window into these brands and these companies a little bit more.
So you said with social media, we said it's lowered, it's even the playing field, and added a different dynamic to marketing and advertising. So I think one of the big things, and one of the things you love is about social media, is that with your billboards and your radio ads and your TV commercials, it was really hard to track like who was seeing this, how many people were actually viewing this. With social media, that's broken the mold. It's changed everything.
Absolutely.
Like,
so I always tell people, like, it's not that I think that pretty much every type of marketing or advertising, classical or more modern, doesn't really matter. They all have views. They all have some kind of value to them. There's still lots of billboards in our town, everywhere. There's value to those. I think it's about what the value is now, though. And so if I'm going to pay, I'm making up a number, $2,000 for a billboard for a month or 2 months or whatever it is, right? But they throw that up and they're like, well, we think about this many cars pass by that. Well, that number is extremely, it's hard to gauge, right? Because number one, is it actually that many? It could change based on the weather or the day or, whatever.
Yeah.
Number two, that doesn't mean you've got all those eyeballs. If I'm driving, I've noticed myself, like when I'm driving, I don't, sometimes a billboard really catches my eye and I look at it and I read it and I know what it is. And then other times it just kind of fades into the background.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't think that's dissimilar from social media, especially these days.
Right.
But it actually tells me the very specific number down to the individual that saw it, that paused on it, that clicked it, whatever. And it also tracks further who those people are.
Right.
Which that's a whole nother topic. But it can at least tell you, like, here's the age group they're in. Are they male or female? Are there certain interests that these people have?
Right.
And they can be retargeted. And so that creates this much larger value than just 100,000 people passed by the billboard today, right? Or this month. And it also helps you future market, which a billboard, or I'm really picking on billboards, but other types of physical advertisements, they might see it one time and that's it.
Right.
They may never come back. Whereas with a Facebook ad or a Facebook post, like if I pause on that just because it looked cool, it might reappear in my feed again.
Right. When something as, in the business we are in, ROI, return of investment, is constantly something that our clients are asking about. And social media helps us gauge that pretty clearly. Like, well, if we've gone one way and it's working, we're like, we're going to keep going this way. If it doesn't, then we're like, okay, we can abandon this completely. Well,
that's a totally interesting topic, because like, it is really hard to track where your new customers come from.
Right.
Like even us, sometimes we'll get someone will submit a form on our website, and we can kind of track maybe where that person came from depending on where they came from. Right. So if they followed one of our ads, the Google Analytics will kind of tell us they went through the website, this is where they came from, and they did end up filling out the form. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's great. But if someone talked to them, if they just knew our name from like a sponsorship that we did or something like that, it's really hard to know that without asking them directly. And that's one of the biggest challenges. And so like you said with ROI, like it's still kind of hard to track unless you're a completely digital company. Like people buy products online, you ship them,
right,
and there's no other way to get that product. ROI is a little bit hard to track, but what we can do pretty much every time is at least tell you, look, if you're going to pay money for an ad, right? Because you need to do marketing. Everyone kind of knows they need to do something, right? If you're going to pay for it, at least, even if it turns into no new customers, or you're not sure if it's turning into new customers because you just can't track it, at minimum, like let's get to a point where you're tracking it. Because what we can do with our social media posts, no matter if it's one of our smallest clients or one of our largest where we're really diving deep, we can at minimum tell them, this post worked, this post didn't. Over the course of a month, what we're doing is increasing your value. It's increasing your following. Over the course of 6 months, it's doing that, or it's not, right? And we can retool pretty, as it comes. We can if 2 months in, like we're like flatlining, we know we need to change what we're putting out there, right? Or we can pivot in other ways. With other types of physical advertising, it might be doing I won't even say it's doing less than, it could be doing the exact same amount, but you don't know.
Right. It's
and
that
that's
question
the
mark.
biggest problem.
Yeah. Well, those smaller companies, they want their marketing dollars to go as far as they can, and you can't set any goals, that way. Like if you're one of your goals is I want 50 new customers. Well, with social media, like you can track that.
Yeah.
With a flyer, you have no idea of who, where this is coming from or how is, so having those numbers, being able to set those goals are super important for small businesses. Because
I think, and social media kind of opened that up. I think Google really started that search engine wise,
right?
But social media made that so much easier because social media, and you kind of got to wonder, is this what they thought when they started this? Like Google's not necessarily asking you tons of questions. Usually with the Google ads, it's more of like it's a segment of person is telling you based on some key things that they do across the internet, right? It might be maybe they looked up something for their dog and they looked up something for their kid. And now it seems like maybe they have kids and dogs, but also it could have been somebody else's dog or somebody else's kid. And it's hard to really know. Whereas in social media land, right? They ask you when you set up your profile, who are you?
Who are you?
Do you have a spouse? Are you related to anyone else on Facebook, and how? Where do you live? And you've posted some pictures of your house now. This is getting creepy, but they really did. They know some stuff.
Oh, I know.
They can figure it out way easier than anyone thinks, I think.
I like camera gear, and Instagram gets me all the time. And I'm like, I want to buy this, but I'm like, I don't need this. This is not something I need.
Yeah,
all the time.
It's really dialed in. They really know based on your likes and things. They ask you and you tell it. They know exactly how to get you, and that's why their ads work as well as they do. That's why they kind of it fails sometimes. I always laugh when I if there's a local small business I want to support, and it's not something I would frequent, but I just like the page or something like that.
Right.
I'll start getting tons of ads for that kind of thing. I'm like, no, I happened to see one video that had that in it.
Right.
And now you just keep bombarding me with it. And that's not something I'm interested in, so it's just not the smartest thing in the world, but over time, it can.
Yeah, exactly. We've talked about a few of the platforms. Can we talk about that kind of holistically for businesses as well?
So this is the big fat question we get all the time.
What should I be doing?
And usually
should I be doing TikToks?
It's usually not which platform should I be on. The question usually is, do you guys do TikTok?
Right.
And I'm like, yes. Why are you asking?
Yeah, exactly.
Careful with your next words.
Right. Well, that's good for us to kind of filter that, because TikTok's in the news almost probably every single day, and everybody knows things. Yeah, and everybody but everybody knows what it is, right? Yeah. So
let's dive in on this. So
sure.
Number one, I think I hear a lot of younger people continue to tout that no one's on Facebook anymore, blah blah blah. Not true at all. Facebook is still one of the largest, if not the largest, social platform. Yes, the general age population has skewed older.
Sure.
But those are also the people with money.
This is true as well.
More typically.
Well, also these are the people that have originally been on Facebook.
Yeah, sorry if I'm going on TikTok. Well, I'll nitpick something, but so Snapchat actually, for instance, I've seen data on this. They have done some advertising. They haven't done near as well, and it's not necessarily because of the placement of ads. I don't think. I think it's more just there's a younger population. They don't really have money. They don't even have cars necessarily. They're not driving out and buying stuff, right?
Right. So
from an advertising standpoint, it's just not necessarily, not always, but not necessarily as useful. Okay. Facebook, again, it's a lot of older people who have more disposable income. So businesses actually do really well with Facebook, right? Because the people that they're actually trying to market to are there. Instagram is getting there. And the other thing too is that, along this path, Facebook purchased Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And so now when I go run ads or anything like that, it's pretty seamless anyway. So then if you just say you're on Facebook, you're on Instagram, you got the pretty much everyone net.
Right.
You at some level, you've got everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's really why Facebook is the most valuable out of the group, whether people like it or dislike it as a person. It just doesn't matter. That if you want to do a business, you want to do some advertisement marketing, that's where you need to be. They are different. There are different functions and features to each one. We can dive in another time on some of that, but there's a lot of functions and features that are the same. Whether they look different or not, they are the same. Reels, which is their biggest thing these days, especially post-COVID, and is also their competitor for TikTok, right? You post a reel, it's pretty much going on both platforms. Personal or professional,
right.
Doesn't really matter. It's pretty much going on both. They're pushing that really heavy. So you're really playing with two really large playing fields there. Not to mention, if you get somebody that's on both,
mm-hmm.
now you're hitting them on both. If they see if they stopped on something on Facebook and now they're on Instagram later, you can get them again, right?
Oh, they've gotten me. They've gotten me that way several times. So yeah.
So it really it's kind of a law of mass.
Yes.
On Meta, Facebook, Instagram stuff. Anyone that says that's not where my audience is, they're probably wrong.
It could be just a personal.
It doesn't mean that there are not other places you can also maybe get them, or maybe a less broad market. There might be some other places, but the Facebook, Instagram platform / castle is really where you want to start.
Yeah.
And that's what we suggest to people every day. If people come to us and they're like, hey, I'm not big on social media. Like, what do I do? Where do I start? We're pretty much always saying Facebook, Instagram first. The one caveat, I think, to that as a baseline is LinkedIn. Not owned by Facebook, owned by, I guess, Microsoft now, I think.
Oh, really?
Microsoft owns it. That's the one caveat, because depending on what you're selling, LinkedIn might actually be a way better thing for you. So for instance, let me think of something. If I sell enterprise software
right.
that businesses buy, not individuals, right? LinkedIn is actually probably a way better place for you to be than Facebook.
There's more of an audience there, right?
Yeah. So LinkedIn it's a lot of the same people from your Facebook and now Instagram. It's just a more niche audience. And by that, I mean, it's those age groups who are professionals,
right?
Who work in a professional environment, who have, jobs in which they might be able to purchase this for their business or their company. In fact, there are people that I know that are more active on LinkedIn than Facebook, Instagram, because they're way more business minded than they are caring to share about their kids and dogs on Facebook, right?
Sure, yeah.
That's just who they are as people, right? So I think that if just depending on what you're selling, like LinkedIn can be either a huge add-on to Facebook, Instagram, or it might be where you start.
Okay.
And that's just one's a little bit more type of what you're offering dependent.
You're right.
On the next episode of Strategic Storytelling.
So if a client comes in and we've asked them all these questions and we've talked about all of these things, and we've picked up the platforms we want to be on, the next thing is to choose what to start posting and how to do that. I think not so long ago, photos were can't just be text, it has to be photos. And now the big thing is, it can't just be photos, it has to be video. So what are some of the trends we're seeing with some of this now? Yeah,
so the trend has actually not changed for many years now.
Subscribe now on your preferred podcast platform and learn more about Pathfinder at yourpathfinder.io.